Hey, welcome back to the channel. Got a little something on the bench for you here. So this is all the parts and pieces needed for a new person in the hobby to build their own 75mm FPV quadcopter. I recommend a 75mm quadcopter because of its durability, its ease to fly indoors and outdoors. It's just an all-around great quadcopter to learn on. There's a lot to learn in this hobby. I'm going to be making an FPV Beginner's Guide. I'll have it on my website. This is kind of a 2-year tradition that I do just to kind of keep updating, get in the air. So radio, firmware, ESC, I mean, we go through all this stuff in that video. This is the build video for that tutorial that I'm going to do. So if you're interested in seeing all the pieces and parts come together to create a quadcopter, this video is for you, so stay tuned. Alright, so the first thing we're going to look at here is the frame. This is the HappyModel Mobula 7 V4 frame. I do like the V4 frame because of its durability. In a crash, the ducts don't break as easy as other frames that I've used. The battery tray is a little... I'm not a huge fan of the battery tray, but because the frame itself doesn't break so easy, this is the one I like to use. This is going to be a race quad, so I'm trying to keep things lighter as well. This frame is definitely lighter than some of the other 75mm frames out there. So lots of things going on in here. So that's the frame that I would like to use for this build. Like I said, you can use about any 75mm frame you want to use. The flight controller is the Betafpv. This is the Matrix 1S 3-in-1. I do have a video already on my channel. I go through this board. I really recommend you going to that video before building your quad. That video has all the checks and balances to do to this. So I go through all of the components in here and things that you need to check before you even solder on it or connect anything to it. So I do recommend you go look at that video first. But that's the flight controller we're going to end up using. We're going to put that in the frame. And then we have our motors here. T-motor. These are 27,000 kV 0802 motors. This is a nice size motor for a 75mm whoop. The kV is a little bit high. I would prefer a beginner to kind of start out around 23,000 kV. 0802 is a pretty decent torquey motor for this size of build. I'm going with the 27,000 kV because, like I said, this is going to be a race quad, so I'm trying to get a little bit more kV out of it. So, and then we have some T-motor 40mm props with the 1mm shaft hole in the middle. So you want to make sure you match that up with your motors when you're searching for motors. You want to make sure that your shaft diameter, because there is a 1.5mm shaft motor out there and a 1.5mm shaft receiving hole in the prop. So make sure in this case for me, I'm using 1mm shaft hole and a 1mm shaft. Okay, so that's something you want to keep in mind. It's always a bummer when you order motors with the wrong size shaft or the props vice versa. So we're going to go with the 40mm T-motor props in purple. And then I have my green canopy. This is the Newbeedrone Goober canopy. It's a little heavy for racing, but I tell you what, it really protects the camera. And because HDzero's cameras are so expensive, I don't want anything to happen to that. Now, if you want to, you can build your quadcopter with analog or some other system that you want to use. I prefer HDzero in my race builds, so I don't have to carry more than one pair of goggles. This is the Whooplite bundle. They do have an Eco as well. I prefer the Whooplite bundle over anything because I feel like it has the best visuals, and that's kind of where I'm at. I don't really care if I'm winning or losing a race. I want to be able to see what I'm doing. So this is all one piece here. I do take these heat sinks off, so I pop these dudes off. It makes it a little bit lighter. They come out with a new camera. They don't have the previous camera that I used to use, so on my channel you might see a different camera. So they do use a little bit larger camera that'll go into this Goober. I do believe that the Goober canopy is still going to protect the end of that camera. Of course, I got to take the lens off. So I think I'll be all right because of this little lip on the front of the canopy. So that's the VTX and camera, the props, the canopy, the flight controller, the frame, and the motors. So in here, as we build along, if I need some other spare parts and pieces, I'll put it down in the description. I'm not going to put, I was going to hyperlink like where I got everything, but I think you should source them, you know, somewhere as local as you can. I don't really have any affiliation or recommendations for any FPV shops. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing I like to do is get the motors on the frame because it's the most tedious. So go ahead and get that started. I'll go ahead and refocus my camera a little bit here. Alright, so we have everything on the bench here. So I have all 4 motors and all the screws. So what I like to do is take one of the screws, put it in the frame here, and then you can see here, let me zoom in for you. Alright, so you can see here that the screw protrudes through the frame just a little bit, and that's pretty important when you're putting this together. You don't want to go up through, see the base of your motor, and you see those windings right there, the copper windings. You definitely don't want a screw that goes so long up into those windings. So we're only going up through the metal base. The little black thing on top of the blue metal base is a PDB board for the wiring. So it's kind of nice because if you rip a wire off, you can easily replace it. You can get the wire harnesses separate. But anyway, I just want to show you something real quick. I like to get my motor lined up here. So we get our motor into position, and we're just going to turn counterclockwise until we see that screw. You can kind of see that screw right there. I don't know if you can hear that better than see it. Okay, you can feel and hear a little snap when you're going counterclockwise, and that's top thread. So go ahead and turn clockwise. And I'm not putting any pressure on this screwdriver. I'm just giving it a little pressure. We'll get our motor lined up a little bit better. But I think that's really important to show that when you put the screw in there, you're going to counterclockwise just a little bit. Because these are steel screws going into an aluminum base. And if you strip out that base right away, when you're trying to build it, it's very frustrating. Turn that counterclockwise until you hear them feel that click, and then go ahead and thread them in. Now what I like to do is when I get done threading them in, is I'll just kind of give them all a little bit snug. Just give them all an even amount of snugness, and then give it just a little bit of a turn. See if I can film just about how much of that turn. So about that much turn. About a little less than a quarter revolution for the turn. So from like 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock. That's all you do. Just give them a little snugness. Because after you fly it, you're going to check on it. Let me zoom out for you here. Alright, so that's one motor mounted. And then I like to take my wires and give them a twist. The twist will take out any slack, and then it also helps the wires from getting broken. Our motor plugs will be right here, so that's where we're going to go. And that's how I like to mount my motors. So I'm going to go ahead and get these other 3 done real quick. Alright, so we have all 4 motors on. Everything's mounted to the frame. So all of them are ready to go. I have the wires out where I need them. The flight controller is kind of unique because when we mount the flight controller using the Whooplite bundle for the HDzero, so when we mount this on here, we want to mount the HDzero. So it'll be like a double stack. I still have to take the heat sinks off. But, so we use these really tall grommets. I purchased these separate. These grommets are 8 millimeters tall, so a total of 8 millimeters. The ones that come with the flight controller are actually clear. I'm not going to use the clear ones. Because I'm using the Whooplite bundle, I don't want components smushing together. The grommets that come with the flight controller itself are really, they just don't have enough strength. So I'm not going to end up using those. I'm going to end up using 2 of these 4mm on one side because I only had 3 of the long ones left. But basically, if you have 4 of the 8mm, it should work out. Like I said, I'm just going to double up on this one side. But these grommets are quite a bit more firm, and you can buy those as an aftermarket. And then also in that aftermarket, you're going to have some elongated screws. So of course you're going to use screws that are longer than 8mm. Let me see where to go. So here's the elongated screw. They come in that package. See if I can hold that so you can see it. But quite a bit longer than the factory screw for the flight controller. As you can see. Here, let me just put it on it. Let me zoom in on it. Just so you can see it. Alright, so there's the one that comes with the flight controller. And then that's the one that comes with these elongated grommets. So you can see quite a different size there. But you definitely want to have, for the Whooplite bundle, or if you're double stacking boards, you want to have a lot taller standoff so that things don't connect in. And then also you can run your wires between the two. So let me go ahead and zoom back out for you. Alright, so factory screw go over here. We'll go ahead and get this dude pushed down into the frame. The frame itself, I mean, obviously there's no right or wrong way, but in this frame, there's a larger hole in the front. So that just tells me where the front is. I'll just take my power lead and push it down between the... Get these out of your way. I'll kind of push that up through here. And then get that dude turned around. So the board orientation, just to make it easy on yourself, the board orientation is that way to the front. So like I said, that screw there tells me it's the front. The arrow's pointing that way. You can see the arrow right there on the flight controller. So that just makes it easier when you get into Betaflight and you're trying to get your orientation set up. So go ahead and squish these down on the frame, the built-in standoffs in the frame. Sometimes the frame's got a little, it's not quite on center, and then these grommets are a little bit stiffer, so sometimes it takes a little pressure to get them to go. Alright, so I have my elongated screws now. So the 8mm grommets and the screws, let me make sure I measure this for you. Yeah, the screw is just, the shank of the screw is 8mm. So these screws and these grommets, these tall, long grommets, are aftermarket. So you'll have to purchase those before you build your quad, if you're going to build one like what I'm doing. So we'll take our VTX here. We'll just pop off the heatsink. Throw it in the trash, because I'll never use it. Alright, so our VTX. Now for me, I have a certain placement. Let me grab my other quadcopter so we can look at that placement. Just makes sense to take a gander at the quad that we're replicating here. So this was what it'll look like finished. So as far as facing forward here, I like to have my MIPI cable over here, and I like to have my my VTX antenna on motor 1. So that's kind of the way I want to put it into the quadcopter. Just because I've had it in there in other directions, and this seems to be the best way to put it in there. This little connector here will connect into the Betafpv quadcopter. We may have to repin the header of this, but for now we're just dry fitment. And then here's a little color code for the wiring, so that's kind of neat. Okay, so we'll keep that little dude somewhere else for now. It's obviously silkscreen marked on the board itself, but we'll go ahead and get this in for fitment. So like I said, I want my UFL facing motor 1, so go ahead and put this dude on there like that. And then we're just going to look to make sure that nothing inside is touching. If we take a big crash, I don't want any components on the other side breaking off. So I'm just going to look here. So that connector is eventually going to touch that. So let me go ahead and zoom in here for you. Well, it's tough to show that to you, ain't it? You kind of see down in there. There's actually this coil pack right here is hitting the top of this connector. So in other words, in a bad crash, we may end up breaking that. And we definitely don't want to break that off. So that little component right there is going to hit that top of the connector. So I'm going to have to rotate this around to the other side. So my MIPI cable come out on the opposite side, and then my VTX UFL will come out on the left side instead of the right side. But now if we look down in here, we have plenty of clearance. See if you can see in there. So now if we squish or we take a heavy hit or a heavy impact, I'm not really feeling any components. Kind of give it a little wiggle. I don't feel any components rubbing, because we are going to put a little bit of pressure. When we tighten this down, there's going to be a little pressure. But the biggest thing is when you take a crash, you don't want the boards touching or tearing components off. So now we know. Let me zoom back out for you. So now we know we need our HDzero VTX orientation in a different way. So that's fine. All right, so we have our Whooplite bundle. We know what orientation we're going to use on the quad. I have my flight controller here, and I'm going to connect the cable to our flight controller. Now, here's the issue. This connector on the flight controller is not correct for the wiring we have going to our HDzero board. So there's a couple options that we could do. We can unsolder the wire and cut it and then reposition it, or we can repin the connector. Because of the length, so the orientation that I'm going to put this in is actually going to be like that. Nope. So it's actually going to be like that. I'm not going to shorten the wires anymore because that's all the length of the wire that I'll have. So I'm going to choose to repin the connector. So I'm going to take this connector loose and I'm going to grab an X-Acto knife. That's the best thing I've been able to find to do it. I'll zoom in for you so you can watch me do one of these real quick. Trying to film this for you. So there we go. And then my helping hands help pull it out of there, you know. So now we're going to grab the 5-volt and we're going to put it into the end here, because that's the schematic that the we'll just take a little something here on the back side to push that metal part in. I don't like to push the pins. I don't like to actually push the pins in with the wire, because if you use the wire to push the pin in, sometimes it can damage the wire, fray it. You know, it bends 90 degrees, whatever. So that one slid in there pretty good. All right, so now we can do our ground. So you get the idea. I'll get the rest depinned. All right, we got zoomed in for you here. So I just want to show you real quick this pin header on the flight controller. So this pin header is actually different wired than the pads. So if you want to use the breakout pads, you can solder into your breakout pads on the flight controller and use the silk screening on the board itself. However, if you're using the pin, the connector, as I am, for your 04 unit, your HDzero, possibly walk snail, I'm not sure because they never send me anything. So this pin header here, we have to use this diagram. Okay, so for your 04 unit, you know, your was it 04 air unit? Some people are calling it the 04 light. You would use your S-bus, ground, and the others for the controller. So S-bus and ground would be for the controller if you're using DJI. If you're using DJI, that's what you're going to use. For the Whooplite bundle, we just need to make sure that this pin header is correct. So we have our 5 volt here on the pin header, so 5 volt, and then that's going up to our HDzero VTX to our 5 volt here, and then our ground will go to the connector next in line as the ground, and then we have our TX, so our transmit pin of our UART is yellow, and our transmit pin goes up to our receiver pin on our VTX, and then our transmit pin on our VTX will go to our RX, our receiver on the flight controller. Does that make sense? And of course, for my case, I'm not using DJI controller, so I don't use these other pin headers. I'll end up using the serial receiver that's built into the flight controller. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that wiring real quick. I should have done it earlier to make sure that you understand where we're going with that. So let's go ahead and get our camera mounted. All right, so the next step is to go ahead and get our canopy and our camera mounted together. So we're going to take our camera. We have our MIPI cable here. We're just going to bow this down. We don't want to pinch that MIPI cable, so we're not going to smash it flat or anything. But we're just going to bow that down, and then we're going to put this dude up into the canopy and just pinch on both sides here. See if we can't get this thing in here without. The MIPI cable's a little bit, let's say a little touchy. If you ever have your video go out and it's just a gray screen, usually it's the MIPI cable. So go ahead and mount this dude in here. So I'm just using a standard motor screw. So this is same screws that you mount your motors to your frame. So it's kind of nice that it's, you know, something readily available. I like to buy extra pieces and parts for whoops because I race whoops, so I have quite a few of them. I'll say quite a few because I got like 3 of them, and we're building one here. So, but that's kind of what I've been doing because Ohio winters can be nasty. So the only way to get your FPV in is with a whoop. So I'm not going to tighten that down too much. Still going to have a little bit of play in it. But like I said, for beginners, I don't recommend putting your camera in your canopy straight ahead. You want to have it about 15 degrees. So you want to have about a 15-degree rake. We'll set the camera angle after we build the quad because I actually use the quadcopter to give me my angle. I'll be more like a 45. So, but starting out, you kind of want to. I would say 15 is a good starting point. So we have our camera in here. You can see how that MIPI cable goes up in there. I may end up putting the back on there eventually. But for now, for this video, we'll just go ahead and get this MIPI cable. VTX. Okay. And then our VTX orientation, what did we say? Front of our quadcopter, the large hole there, we have our arrow pointing that way. And we'll get our board rotated around here. Like so. We'll get our canopy kind of in position. So this is the fun part, assembling all these pieces and parts. I like to start with the back screw, so we'll go ahead and get him in. Have my 8mm M1, I think it's M1.2. I have to look again, but it's been a while since I've looked them up. I bought a whole bunch of them at one point in time. So we're just going to put that down in there. Make sure that it's into the plastic receptacle. So the little standoff that's in there. So we'll go ahead and give it about probably two full rotations into the case there. We don't want to start putting any pressure on it yet. We'll go ahead and get our other extra grommet, since I didn't have 4 of the 8mm standoffs, so I'll have to use this one. And now I want to get a washer in there. I didn't put a washer in the back because it's just such a pain to start out that way. Grab our other screw here, thread that down through. The hardest part about this is just lining up on the standoff. Really. Give that a little bit of snugness. Nothing. We don't want to tighten it down too much because we can't get our washers in otherwise. So we'll get a washer in on the other side here. The washer is kind of important because when you take a heavy crash and your camera gets twisted, when your camera rotates around because of an impact, the camera rotation, there's just a tiny space that will cut that MIPI cable. So I found to keep that from happening, I put a little spacer in there, raise that canopy up a little bit more. And it's definitely saved me some MIPI cables. Unfortunately, there's still so many. There's so many instances where the MIPI cable still gets cut. Get this dude in here. You kind of, if you just gingerly drop it straight down in, you can kind of feel, otherwise the screw will go between the standoff and the board. So we're just going to turn that until we get a little snugness. We want to go ahead and get the front snugged in where we want it. I'm just looking around, making sure there's no components or wires being pinched. I'm going to take this back one out. We'll get our washer in there. You can leave the washer out of the back one if you want, but I like to have it in there. Just going to turn it counterclockwise until I feel the threads, that because you actually created the threads the first time you put the screw in. So I just need to find that thread again. You might have to kind of finagle this around a little bit. Until you find that standoff again. And then we're just going to give it a little snug. Now what I like to do is I like to pinch the canopy down, and if there's a bunch of play between the screw head, it's like right here. Let me zoom in for you so you can see what I'm saying. So if you push down on the canopy and you see there's a bit of play in there, see that little bit of space between the screw right here. So that screw isn't tight enough. We don't, we're not putting a great deal of pressure on it. But that'll cause vibrations, and also your canopy's kind of sliding around. So just tighten it up a little more, make sure, yep, no more play. We'll do that to the front, nice and snug. Check this other side. We'll just make sure there's not a whole lot of play. Tighten him down a little bit more. Because you're not really tightening it down real tight, because the more you tighten it, the more you squish your standoffs and the closer your two boards get together. So we don't want that. Check the back here, make sure there's no... Alright, so nice and connected there. So it looks to me like everything is all connected, and then the washers, as you can see, since we put these little spacers in there, it gives us more space. You see that area right here between the camera and this MIPI cable? So in a big crash, that edge of that camera would come down and cut that MIPI cable. So by putting them spacers in there, it kind of helps that out so it doesn't happen as often. Okay, so that is it for the top side. Now when I set my camera angle, so I put my quadcopter at the angle that I want. So I'll put the quadcopter, let's say 45-degree angle. Let me zoom out just a little bit. So let's say that this stick is 90 degrees horizon. So this is the 90-degree horizon line. So if the quadcopter's flying perfectly flat, it would be like that. And a lot of people will try to get their camera angle like that, but I don't find that that's very easy. So if you tilt your quadcopter to 15 degrees like this, and then you'll have your camera point out to the 90 degrees. So in my case, I want to turn my quadcopter to 45 degrees, and then I'll raise my camera to match that. So right there would be 45-degree camera angle. See what I'm saying? So the quadcopter is 45 degrees off the 90-degree angle. And then we're just pointing the camera towards that. That's how I found the best way to do it. So now when you lay the quadcopter, if it's flat hovering, the camera's pointing 45 degrees up. But like I said, for a new person, I recommend 15. Let me zoom all the way out. Okay, so I'll go ahead and tighten this down. This is kind of set to my camera angle. So we're going to get this nice and snug, and then we're going to give it a little bit of extra because we're actually in steel inserts. So the HDzero camera has steel inserts. So I'm going to make sure I snug that up good so that this doesn't rotate at all. So the top part is done other than the antenna. I may end up using this antenna for a short time because I don't have any more of the whips. Normally I'm running an antenna like this. You can see it's just a UFL connector, and then it has the 15.4 millimeter whip coming out of the ground insulation. So that's normally what I run on my race quads. Yeah, I'm definitely going to use a whip. I need to get some more of them because I'm not gonna use that. You know, if you're freestyling or you're flying, you know, far distances or something like that, you might want it. So the motor wires, I just give them a good twist, and then I come out around the frame this way because I don't want the wire inside the inside there with the motor and propeller. So go ahead and give these a little bit more twist, and we'll go ahead and get all our motor wires plugged in. All right, so we got all our motor wires plugged in. Got our wire out of the way. I'll have to say one thing, that the T-motor wires are a lot longer than the other brands of motors that I've used. Alright, so the next step would be to go ahead and I like to zip tie this down. So let me grab a lipo real quick to make sure that this is measured correctly. So we'll go ahead and put our lipo in here. Let me see. Looks like we might have it orientated that way. So this dude would go in there, and then this will plug in here like that. But before we do plug in our quadcopter, we need to get a continuity check. Never plug in anything until you check the continuity to make sure you don't have any pinched wires. If you're not familiar with continuity check, I do have a video in my channel. If you go to my playlist, so in my quick tips video playlist, you'll find how to do the continuity check. And we're just going to go ahead and grab our power lead here, get the battery out of there, and we'll go ahead and plug in our or we'll just set our meter on the pins here. I like to kind of do it like that. So the initial beep that you hear, the quick little beep, is the system charging up. And then once the system is charged up, it's sending a little information back to your meter using the voltage, and we know that we're good. So if you were to hear that when you do this, you got a problem. Do not plug a LiPo in. The other thing is, you can go in here, if your meter doesn't beep, but you see that you see zeros or a very, very small number like a point something, I'd be reluctant to plug in a LiPo. So we know we don't have any shorts or continuity issues, so we're just going to go ahead and plug it in, make sure we hear our ESCs, hear some noise. Okay. Let me unplug this and get it out of the way so I can show you the LEDs. Listen to this. Okay. And then LEDs on the board. So we have our yellow green flashing. That lets us know that it's ready to receive the transmitter, so our radio. The blue light on there with the red light flickering. I don't know if you can see that. That's indicating that the flight controller is communicating. And then up here on the top, we have our HDzero. So you can see kinda. On the top of the board, you see the blue light solid on the HDzero. That means that it is communicating and transmitting, so we should have some video. So that is it on that. Now it's time to put some props on this dude. So let's go ahead and get our propellers. I was going to put some tri-blades on here, but I think I'm going to go with the 40 millimeter bi-blades. So let me go ahead and get these dudes on here. So now the orientation that I want to go with the prop is I want to go props out. So what props in means is that the rotation is in toward your camera. Okay, so they would be, this one would be counterclockwise, this would be clockwise, and that would be props in. I run every quad, everything I own is props out. The reason why I run props out is because, especially with race quads, freestyle quads, open duct props, you'll actually, sometimes you get lucky and it'll bounce you off of the object. Or if you hit a branch, instead of grabbing the branch and pulling it in, it actually pushes it out. So your quad will hit and bounce away from it. I just found that it's a lot better to bounce off of it. Now, there's been arguments in the past about performance. I don't really see that it's a performance thing. It's just the fact that it's not grabbing it. It's more likely to bounce off of it. So I always do props out. So in that case, I want to mount my props. So this one is going to grab the air in the clockwise position. This one is going to grab the air in the counterclockwise position. Okay, so the rotation for grabbing air is counterclockwise and clockwise. And then over here, we're going to grab the air in a clockwise and then counterclockwise. So I seriously have grabbed, I didn't do too bad. I just kind of grabbed them, didn't I? Let me make sure I grab the right ones. Alright, so counterclockwise, clockwise, clockwise, counterclockwise. Okay. Yeah, a lot of times people will do that. They'll put one propeller on wrong, and then the thing wants to have all kinds of problems. It'll go on the floor, and it's so aggravating. So in the video that I'm doing for the FPV Beginner, this quad gets totally set up for that video. So all the firmware flashing and all the things that are necessary to do the software side of this quad will be done in that video. I think I might end up, I think I still might end up getting this antenna out of here. I'm kind of racing with it. I know you don't want these bent. You want them as straight as possible. So I'm just going to get it out of the way of the connector. So this dude is ready. Hardware wise, this thing is completely finished. The only thing that I had to buy separate from what came with it is the 8mm screws and the 8mm standoffs. And let me go ahead and give you a close-up look of this dude. We have our little camera protector. It's nice to have. Yeah, I do see that the once you take that off, that camera's protected pretty well. Pretty impressed with this Newbeedrone Goober canopy. I run it on just every all of my 75mm quads. So this one here actually has LEDs already on it. I'm not sure if I'll do a tutorial putting them on the quadcopter. I do have a tutorial on how to build them. So in my videos, if you just remember anything on that you're looking for when it comes to FPV, just type in what you're looking for. So like LEDs space Propsoff, and then it'll generate my video, because I probably have a video on just about anything you can imagine. So just in the search bar, just type in whatever it is that you're wanting to know, and then Propsoff at the end, and something should come up. But I already have a tutorial on how to build the LEDs. I'm not sure if I'll do it on this quad, but this dude is ready to fly once we get the firmware done. So that's everything in here. The only thing that I'm looking at, because of that matrix 3-in-1 having that connector, it's made me turn my HDzero. So this little connector for updating is just hitting the edge of that canopy. I may take this canopy off and just sand down that little corner right there so that connector's not touching anymore. For now, I'm not too concerned about it. I know with a good impact it may damage that connector, so I'm going to get a different antenna. But you can see that this is completely solderless. Everything just connected together and screwed together, and this thing's gonna be a ripper. So we'll go ahead and get ready to film everything needed for the FPV Beginner guide. Let me zoom back out for you here. So anything in the FPV Beginner guide, you might have some questions you want addressed while I film that. In comments, you might want to put that in. If you have any questions about the hardware that I used here, the pieces and parts, let me know in comments. And then remember that this flight controller, the Betafpv 3-in-1, this is the Matrix 1S brushless G4 3-in-1 HD V101. Remember that I have a video on my channel already where I go through that flight controller in case you have questions about it. I definitely recommend going to that video with your multimeter in hand and making sure that everything's ready to go with that before you connect anything. So all the hardware's done. I hope that this video is entertaining, helpful in any way. Part of the FPV Beginner guide that I'm working on. I would appreciate it if you give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. If you hated it, you can give it a thumbs down. It all works. Enjoy the breeze.